Whatever situation you're in, and in this case, real estate investing, you're stuck on something, there's something that's not going properly, talk to other people who have done the same thing as you. Talk to other people who are just a bit further down the spiral of real estate investing, because you'll be amazed at all the solutions you're going to get. And by going out and talking to people, you'll get out of your problems, you'll get out of your situations, and those surprises won't really be surprises anymore.
Have you been thinking about buying your first rental property for some time, or do you already own a bunch of properties? Well, fellow investors, you found the right location to listen and learn from others' successes. Welcome to The Very Real Estate Effect with your host, Axel Monsaingeon.
Hello, and welcome back to the Very Real Estate Effect podcast, a show dedicated to real estate investing right here in Quebec. And today it's a pleasure and an honor to be sharing a story with you about something that actually happened last week, this week. You're going to hear all about it. Anyways, how to deal with surprises and uncertainty. As usual, share this episode with a friend who could benefit from this conversation. I'm always taking questions, feedback, and I will get into it as I have a story about this. So there you go. As you know, you've been following the show for a while, and if you haven't, this is news. We've been working on a project here in Verdun, and for quite a while, it's been a little too long in the planning. Anyways, and now we're starting the construction. We're there. We're going. It's today. So we went today, and it started with the mobilization has been done. So there's the fences all around. There's the portable toilet that have been brought on site. The team has started to come in. And literally yesterday, we had a call where there was something unexpected. The person responsible on site, the superintendent, was there and looks at the plans, looks at all the plans. So the architectural plans, the engineering plans, what they're supposed to build and everything. And he just kind of scratches his head and goes, wait a second. I think there's something missing. So I'm going to backtrack to be able to get to this point. We started this project over a year ago, and actually about 2 years ago. It just took a really long time with the city. And the structural engineer came on site, had access to everything. Okay, it's a duplex. We're adding a full floor and then a mezzanine, turning it into a fourplex. The structural engineer came on site. The city came on site. The architect came on site, and everybody went home and did their homework and provided plans about what is it that's supposed to happen with this project. And we used all those plans to go to the city, and we used all those plans to get a construction quote. And from that construction quote, we got a financing. And from that financing, we were able to tie up all of the projects. So the contractor, the financing, the permit with the city, and then off we go. Now, everybody's had access to all the documents for months. And in getting the contractor to quote, we gave them obviously all the documentation. We give them access to the site so they can come and visit. Now, remember that the place has been stripped. So you can see the bare bones. You can see the foundation. There's holes in the wood, in the subfloor. Like, you can see everything. There is no surprises. And that's why we like it to be able to give access to the contractor so he can quote while everything is open, because then it removes the possibility of surprises, right? Guess what? Surprise happened. So we're a day before starting. Everything is ready. And then the superintendent on site looks at the plans, looks at the architectural plans, and then actually looks on site and says, hold on a second, there's a slight discrepancy. There's basically a 6 inch discrepancy. And you're like, 6 inches, it's nothing, right? Yeah, except when it comes to the foundations. And to make a long story short, there is a wall out of concrete blocks, des parpaings, blocks that need to be put in place between us and the neighbor. That's code. It's standard. It needs to be there. No surprises. However, when the structural engineer came, he saw it. He measured. He all that. But somehow the plans that he produced didn't account for that thickness. And so he provided us a construction plan that where we need to put the wall on something right now that isn't really there, because there is the foundation is that it's a block wall that goes all the way down. And so in front of that, theoretically, we need to build a second wall to rest on something that doesn't exist. Like, how did this happen? Like, everybody went on site, everybody looked at it. So obviously we jump on a call, we get the contractor, we get the structural engineer, we get the superintendent, and everybody's looking at it. And because the first thing is like, well, there's going to, we're going to have to do more. We're going to have to redo more of the foundation. We're talking 6 inches here, but 6 inches over, 30 feet. And we're a bit surprised. We're like, how do you guys miss this? Like, how did this happen? And when we talk to each individual, it always makes sense. And it does. They're professionals. It's just that somehow collectively something was missed. And so not that we want to point the fingers, it's just that we need to understand, because at the end, we already did our financing. It's a fixed cost for the construction contract, and it's a fixed cost for the loan. And so if it costs more, we don't actually have more resources. Like, this is what we have for this project. And when you get this the day before it starts, you're like, okay, come on. Now, I was sharing this with someone who's like, oh my God, this is so bad. What are you going to do? I was like, no, that's just an average day in real estate investing. You can work with the best professionals. There will always be surprises. Now, the thing about surprises is how you handle them. We could have thrown our arms up in the air and said, oh my God, we stop everything and this and that. But you know what? No, because the show must go on. And now mobilization has started. They've started the demolition, and the excavator is fully coming on, because right now they're finishing to demolish some stuff on the inside. The excavator is coming next week. Like, this is a go. Now, we're on the phone with the superintendent, with the engineer, and we figure out a solution. And in the end, it looks like there's not going to be really an extra cost. They're going to have to do things a bit differently. They might have to pour the foundation in a slightly different way than originally planned. And this was just a reminder of, like, you think you've checked it all before. You think you've looked at everything. But until you start, and even once you've started, there can always be surprises. And what we had said was, hey, contractor, you have access to the property. There should be no surprises. The place has been stripped. Like, you can see the ground, you can see the roof, you can see everything. There's always surprises. It's just how you handle them. Now, surprises and how to handling them. Okay, this is when you get to listen and learn something. You have to remember that early on in your career, you get, problems. You can rank them between, let's say, 1 and 10. And a problem 3 of level 3 is extremely intimidating, because you're just starting. You don't know how to deal with this. You get stuck, but obviously you're a resourceful person and you can figure out, okay, well, let's get all the parties involved. Let's get them talking to one another, and then we'll go from there, because technically you work with professionals whose job it is to solve exactly those problems. So your job at this point is just to coordinate. It's not really to come up with solutions. They'll come up with solutions. You just need to create the environment, the moment, the phone call, the meeting on site where everybody gets to talk and together come up with a solution. Now, it can be imagined that there are some solutions that are, well, you made that mistake and you should have noticed this and you should have noticed that. You know what? If it's about pointing fingers, it doesn't really go well. It doesn't really move forward in the right direction. What we need to do is, it doesn't really matter whose fault it is or what happened. We can debrief about that afterwards. What matters right now is the ball has to keep rolling. The show must go on. So what are we going to put together to make sure this happens? And so that's what we did. So for us, I mean, I understand the basics of construction and foundation and so on, and how, a load transfer happens. So if you build a 4th floor, the 4th floor rests on the 3rd, who rests on the 2nd, who rests on the first, and the first rests on the foundation. So by the time you get to the foundation, there's 4 floors stacked in terms of weight and force, and it needs to be well anchored and supported. That's that far I understand. Now, exactly how to calculate that load transfer, I don't know. I don't care. And that's why we pay a good structural engineer. Now, my job is to get everybody around the table to be able to talk about it. And a problem 3 is super intimidating and scratch your head and so on and so forth. Now, the more you advance, the more deals you do, the more you're exposed to deals, the more you're exposed to problems. Because let's be realistic, there's always problems, right? Whether it's at acquisition, whether it's at financing, whether it's in due diligence, whether it's in the permitting, whether it's in construction, in execution, whether it's in then stabilization and finance, refi and takeout and stuff. In a way, there's a bit less surprises if all the other steps have been done properly. But at every step of the way, there is the opportunity for something to go not as planned. And again, a problem 3 is really intimidating. Now, the more you go, the more you're able to deal with harder and stronger problems, because the more deals you've done, the more experience you have, you know who to talk to. You don't need to solve all the problems. You just need to know the people who can solve the problems for you. And I'll give you a case. Like, I had something that with a legal standpoint, I was freaked out. It was something else, another deal, another situation, and I was freaked out. And then it's like, no, just call this lawyer. He specializes in this. He'll be able to tell you. So yeah, it cost me $150 for a half-hour conversation, but literally within 20 minutes, I knew exactly what to do, how to go about it, and I had my advice. Doesn't mean I have to go learn the criminal code of Quebec or the civil code or whatsoever. I just need to know whose phone number to dial. And then, with problem 3, problem 4, problem 5, problem 7. And then by the time you've been exposed to problems 7, 8, 9, 10 in terms of difficulty, a problem 3 that 4 years ago would have intimidated you is a piece of cake. And someone tells you a situation, you're like, how is this a problem? Just call so and so, explain the situation. He'll tell you exactly what to do, and then you just do that. And I'm proud to say that I feel like sometimes we've achieved more confidence, because what used to be big problems before now is like, oh, it's 3 phone calls, you get those people to talk to one another, and then it's solved. And then my responsibility is to get them to talk to one another and then to recap at the end. Okay, so if I understand this correctly, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to let us know how to deal with this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to send us an email by the end of the day. Is that right? And then I do a full recap just to make sure we're on the same page, so everybody understood the same thing and they all walk away with action items. So this was just yesterday, and I just wanted to share it with you today because it's important, because you get to learn, because it's not easy. And I want to thank Jason. I hope he'll be listening to this podcast. Last week, I was invited at an event full of real estate investors, real estate developers, and big ones, like big ones. And someone had told me, the organizer had told me, like, you'll see this event has become one of the places to be and one of the events to attend throughout the season. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then when I was there, I was like, yeah, when I saw the caliber in the room. And while we were at the cocktail before the dinner, at the end of the day, someone came up to me, Jason, and said, hey, Axel, I listened to your podcast. Thank you for what you're doing. And that was really heartfelt. So Jason, by the way, thank you very much. I actually sent you a text message, but I got a weird reply and it wasn't your number. So please get in touch with me. We're on LinkedIn or Instagram. Now, something else I want to share is that at that event, I was having a conversation with my friend Joël, another French fellow. If he's listening to this, he'll understand. And I was sharing, some stuff that I'm working on and some of the difficulties I've had in the past. And he looked at me and he said, well, do you go out? I'm like, what do you mean? Do I go out? Like, do I go out on Saturday nights? No. He's like, do you go out with other people, other professionals from the industry? And do you actually talk about your situation, what you're going through? And I said, yeah, sometimes. Like, this is one of the events. Like, this is a great example. And he said to me the very simple sentence that I want to share with you. He said, so it's in French, but I'll translate it. Basically, if you go out, your problems will go out. And so in French, it's si tu sors, tu t'en sors. So if you go out and meet people, you'll get out of your problems, because we tend to think of problems and issues and surprises as, oh my God, this is such a big deal for me. What am I going to do? And then you talk to somebody else who's like, oh, I've had this before. Here's what I did. And then within 15 minutes, you're like, oh my God, this is genius. And so after Joël said that to me, si tu sors, tu t'en sors, it stuck with me. And I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And I'm extremely grateful for him, for him to share that with me, because I think there's a lot of truth to it. And that's my advice to you today, is that whatever situation you're in, and in this case, real estate investing, you're stuck on something, there's something that's not going properly, talk to other people who have done the same thing as you. Talk to other people who are just a bit further down the spiral of real estate investing, because you'll be amazed at all the solutions you're going to get. And by going out and talking to people, you'll get out of your problems, you'll get out of your situations, and those surprises won't really be surprises anymore. And this is how, actually, as a community, we can always help each other out. Sometimes just about picking up the phone, be like, hey, man, I'm in this situation. Like, what would you do? It goes a long way. It goes a long way because you'll learn, and other people will actually be happy to help you and support you and refer you whatever kind of professional you may need to get out of it. So just remember today, when you're going home, when you're stuck in a problem and you're like, oh, what should I do? If you go out, your problem will go out. Okay? Think about it. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and week after week sharing this with a friend. It really means a lot to me. And Jason, seriously, get in touch with me. Allez, have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next week. Thank you.